When I say collateral damage, it sounds like I'm on a different planet. So we can make these emotional appeals over and over again, and we can use like the number over and over again. But here are facts, okay? We know that Hamas operates out of civilian areas. Even Amnesty International admitted as much since 2014. We know that there are videos of medical people running and grabbing guns and giving it to Hamas fighters. We can watch those videos on YouTube. We know that Hamas has tunnels that it's built that operate underneath civilian infrastructure. We know that Hamas uses hospitals to bring captured hostages to. We know that Hamas used Al-Shifa as an interrogation site. Again, even Amnesty International and the UN said as much. We know that Hamas has fired rockets out of refugee areas and out of other medical operating areas. We know these things are true, okay? We know that. And we also know that Israel has been pressured to allow more humanitarian aid in, and they acquiesced to that pressure. We know that Israel gave the northern Gazans warning on when they were supposed to leave, told all of them to evacuate the area before the bombings began. We know that Israel makes phone calls to certain buildings or houses to tell people that you need to leave. And we know that Israel does roof knocks before they bomb these things, okay? We know every single thing that I just said, and we can fight over any of these you want. These are all undisputed facts that are verified by third-party international orgs, some of which are quite hostile towards Israel. To go through all of that evidence and then to say, well, 18,000 civilians, so they must be indiscriminately targeting. That is a statement uttered without evidence, and it begs for any sort of justification whatsoever. There is none. There's no evidence that any of this exists. It is a fantastic point that's thought up in the West by people that are dealing with no actual facts on the ground of anything that's happening.
Thank you. There's a lot to respond to, yeah.
No, those 19,000 civilians are not dead.
Is that what I said?
I mean, you said that there was no evidence that the 18,000 people had died. I don't know.
I said there's no evidence that they were being indiscriminately targeted or intentionally killed by Israel.
It was all an accident.
Do you think they were intentionally trying to kill civilians?
Oh, definitely.
Then why didn't they kill more? Why only 19,000?
Because they're doing it in a way where they have plausible deniability. Look, I'm sorry, I'm going to do my first insult, but for schmucks like you to go, well, they were moving them and they were being super gentle and they surrounded them with pillows and they warned them, and they killed 20 times as many civilians as Hamas did. But golly, gee, it was all an accident.
Gotcha. And I'll let you do your whole thing. I'm just curious. Do you have a single shred of evidence for any of that? That's what I thought. Okay, you can do your whole thing, but you have no evidence. You have no evidence for the indiscriminate targeting of civilians.
People are dead.
Are you just going to keep repeating the number? We can count if you want. We can spend the rest of the room counting up to 90,000.
Not civilians?
I'm saying they're not indiscriminately targeting civilians, and if you have a single shred of them indiscriminately targeting civilians, I'd like to hear it.
Targeting civilians,
yes.
Yeah. So my contention is, since they're dropping 2,000-pound bombs, dumb bombs, 29,000 bombs, etc., and they've killed 19,000 people, which are almost all civilians, but even if you take the IDF numbers, over 3/4 are civilians. My contention is that's not an accident.
Cenk, can you respond to what Destiny said? He gave out a list of things saying that because Israel do all of these, therefore they're really trying to take security very seriously.
Yeah, I'm going to address that. But wait, so my contention is they didn't accidentally kill a disproportionate number of civilians. Now, so you're saying your contention is they were trying their damnedest to not kill civilians.
Well, but the difference is you can say that in a goofy voice, but I gave you evidence of that. Cenk, I gave you evidence of that.
Cenk said you're going to respond to those points of evidence.
Yeah, you can try to put my side in a funny voice. I'm not using a funny voice. I'm saying that Israel allows in humanitarian aid at Western pressure. Israel delayed the invasion to give people time to flee. Israel told everybody in northern Gaza that a military conquest was coming, and Israel does do door knocking, and Israel does call buildings. These are all very strange actions from somebody that is trying to maximize civilian casualties.
Yeah, they're not at all strange. They're exactly what you would do if you wanted plausible deniability as you massacred civilians and committed war crimes.
To actually put leaflets or to tell people to move away? How's that plausible deniability? Isn't that trying to take security very seriously?
Yeah, so in the beginning, when Israel had more brakes in the car, they would actually do the door knocking and the leaflets that you guys mentioned. And then tons of civilians would die, but it was plausible deniability that was not unbelievable, right? And so I remember thinking that's not nearly good enough, but hey, they're trying, right? Now they've gotten to a point, there's no door knocking in Gaza, okay? And leaflets, what difference would it make? They're all squeezed into a tiny little area. Okay, so then now when you look at the actual facts on the ground, Destiny made it seem like it was like a humanitarian thing that they moved them from the north to the south. No, that's called ethnic cleansing and mass relocation. it was actually a hallmark of the Armenian genocide that the Turks moved the Armenians to a place that was safer. Same thing with the Bataan Death March, the Trail of Tears. All of that ethnic cleansing is the definition of a war crime. You made it seem like it was humanitarian. Then once they got them into the South, then they started bombing the South. There's literally nothing humanitarian about it. It's just one war crime that compounds another war crime. It's not even close. It's the size of Vegas. They moved it to half the size of Vegas, and then they started dropping bombs on the South. It's totally indefensible. I am speaking out against terrorism that is coming from Hamas or any Palestinian side, and I'm also speaking out against what I think is terrorism from the Israeli side, as they kill 20 times the civilians that Hamas did. You, on the other hand, seem to be saying the Palestinians do terrorism wherever they go, and they're terrible, and we have to keep an indefinite occupation. But the Israelis, when they kill disproportionate number of civilians and 20 times the civilians that Palestinians do, are not doing terrorism, are the good guys, and it's all just an accident. And that's why I do the voice, Destiny, because that seems ridiculous and totally not believable.
What else?
No, I just told you that I said ground forces, just like America had ground forces, and then you send the special forces inside the tunnels. If you say, it's too hard, the IDF can't handle it, they're scared, they don't actually want to fight Hamas, then what are they doing?
Why do you keep saying they're scared? First of all, you're fighting terrorists that are operating out of civilian infrastructure. These are the most cowardly ways you can ever conduct.
No, that's insane.
What's insane? What part of that was insane?
Yeah, the insane standard is, hey, you're all in an open air prison. Some of you are trying to fight back, and you're in the tunnels. Oh, because some of you are trying to fight back, I'm going to bomb not the tunnels, but the civilians that aren't fighting back. But because some of you dared to fight back against your occupation, what was Hamas supposed to do? Go build a military complex in the middle of the desert somewhere in Gaza? Well, they would be bombed immediately. So it's an impossible
So they have to listen, if you're going to justify them, if you're going to justify the use of human shields, if you can justify the use of human shields,
That's let me. Cenk, are you trying to justify the use of human shields?
No. I reject completely the use of human shields.
That's what you just justified. You said, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to fight actually like a military, or are they supposed to operate out of civilian homes? Like,
no. Okay, listen, guys. First of all, the Israeli Defense Forces uses human shields. There's pictures and video.
Good pivot. No, you're talking about the kid on the back of the truck. This is BS, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's not BS. They put kids in front of them and literally use them as human shields. There is no equivalent in even among the awful Hamas. Instead, Hamas is in Gaza. Gaza is a giant residential area the size of Vegas. And then when you bomb their civilians, you go, well, they're in Gaza. Hamas is in Gaza. And so since they're in Gaza and civilians are in Gaza, they're using human shields? They're making us murder their citizens. They're making us drop 2,000-pound bombs on their citizens. It's Hamas's fault that we had to murder all their civilians. Well, where the hell is Hamas supposed to be? Are they supposed to be in Sweden or Bangkok?
Well, that's where their leadership. That's where their leadership goes when they make millions and millions of dollars and then conduct warfare from overseas. But except it's usually what, like Qatar, Tunisia, or whatever.
According to your guys' logic, Israel is using human shields. They are bombing from Israel, and so what is Hamas supposed to do? They're supposed to come in and bomb and attack and shoot the Israeli civilians because the dastardly IDF is using Israelis as human shields. Why didn't Israel attack from Norway or Budapest?
It is entirely possible. I do concede. I saw a lot of video footage of the festival. Maybe there were military missile installations around there, and they just didn't show them on camera. But
in Gaza, Destiny.
I'm not. I'm just saying that, like, the idea. I'm saying that
because you have brutalized them for 56 straight years, you're keeping them in an open air prison, and then you go, oh, I can't believe that their fighters are in the same area. They're in the same prison.
Cenk, why do you think Gaza is treated so? Why is Gaza? Why is
dumbest argument on the planet?
Then complain to Amnesty International because they talk about Hamas using them as well. So does UN Human Rights Watch. Why is Gaza treated so much differently than the West Bank?
The West Bank is helping Israel with the occupation Palestinian Authority. That's why it's on the edge of collapse.
Wait, so I just want to go back.
Fighting back, and I think they're fighting back in an immoral and counterproductive way. But yeah, that's the giant difference.
Wait, so I want to go back to that point about human shields because it was a really good point. Cenk, can you not agree with Amnesty International that Israel are using human shields? Not Israel, sorry, that Hamas are using human shields.
I do not agree with them. No,
You do not agree?
no, I do not agree. Because look, guys, under that same logic, no matter anytime anyone attacks from their own territory that has civilians, then they're using human shields. So if America launches missiles from U.S. bases in America, then the other side would say, oh, you guys are using human shields. I had to nuke all of Kansas, all of Colorado, because you guys were using human shields. You dastardly put your weapons, your nuclear weapons, your missiles in Colorado, thereby forcing me to nuke Colorado. It's America's fault for using human shields. You tell me how that logic doesn't apply.
The logic doesn't apply because we don't fire bombs and rockets from apartment complexes or use hospitals, civilian hospitals, to interrogate hostages.
Military bases because they're occupied.
Okay, so we think that it's so okay.
So
Yeah, I understand. So you're justifying the use of human shields. That's fine. You can justify it. I think that you can actually make arguments there. It's a pretty brave position.
Fury justifies it that Israel is using human shields. Two can play at this game all day long.
If Israel was launching attacks from an area,
why are you justifying the human shields that Israel is using? You sound so immoral.
First of all, it doesn't matter if Israel uses human shields or not. The reason why you use
that doesn't matter.
Well, correct. It doesn't matter. Do you know why? Do you know why it doesn't matter? It doesn't matter if Israel uses human shields because Hamas wants to kill civilians anyway. So why would you waste your time, right? If you put a civilian in front of an IDF tank, Hamas goes, oh, a 2-for-1 special. Obviously, human shields won't work on the Israeli side.
Civilians, but Israel kills 20 times the civilians that Hamas does. But golly gee, they didn't want to kill them.
What else could Israel have done to minimize casualties? I'm curious.
Yes, I have that too.
Okay.
So, and I am not saying this today. I said it on the day of. What they should have done is something that is very hard but doable. Special forces. So it's not going in there and saying, "Hey, Hamas, it's okay that you."
No. We're talking about within how they're doing right now, as far as
No. Even day of. What is this special forces talking point is brought up over and over and over again. I don't know if it's ironically as the professional video game player. I don't know if people are watching too many movies or video games. You don't send special forces into a densely urban populated area and have 100 soldiers kill 5,000 enemy combatants. That's not how special forces work. Most of the time, these are either serving for highly specialized missions or they're serving in support roles. What do you mean send in special forces to remove Hamas? Can you tell me what that operation looks like?
Yeah, so it would involve some degree of ground invasion. I understand that, and but it would not involve indiscriminate bombings. I'm sorry, the very targeted bombings that just happened to accidentally kill all those tens of thousands of civilians. It would have involved ground invasion. Obviously, you clear some degree of path to get to the tunnels, and then you send people inside the tunnels. Now, that is very dangerous. But that's the whole point of special forces. But if you go inside the tunnels, number one, you get to Hamas much more efficiently. Number two, you might actually rescue the hostages. Instead,
by just sending people into tunnels that the enemy has built and knows the entire layout of and has every control over, you just send random special forces that, is it like a nation of Rambos?
Or the hard fighting. You don't want to actually rescue.
It's not about the hard.
You don't want to actually.
It's not about the hard fighting.
You just want to drop bombs because it feels good.
Cenk, has this type of military occupation or operation ever been performed in any part of human history? Are you referencing anything in reality when you talk about utilizing special forces this way, or is this a totally fantastical point that people have invented that has never worked?
First of all, the U.S. fought huge battles inside Iraqi cities, Mosul and otherwise, and those were horrific and deadly. But they did not incinerate Mosul. They did, and there was plenty to blame there in what happened in Mosul. But yes, they spent guys on the ground, including special forces, to get the bad guys.
That wasn't terrible. That wasn't special forces.
It partially worked, and it worked a lot better than dropping 29,000 bombs on Mosul. And remember, in Mosul, we never dropped a bomb over 500 pounds because we thought that was a war crime.
What? We dropped of course we dropped bunker busters in Iraq. Where do we get this idea that we never dropped a heavy bomb?
No, there's a giant difference. Let me clarify. Bunker busters are usually in open spaces. The 500-pound bomb rule, and 500 was a super max. And normally we wouldn't go that high either. And this is New York Times reporting. We would never drop in residential areas. And Gaza's all residential areas.
Okay, so then the bunkers and everything we're looking for are going to be under residential buildings. So what do? Do you just not bomb them? For Mosul, we had air support. We had a military force invading with a full fleet of support. It wasn't just special forces. That's absolutely not true.
You see how it's sophistry?
It's not sophistry. It's called collateral damage. This is how warfare works, unfortunately. Sophistry is pretending. Sophistry is having never watched the movie Black Hawk Down and assuming that you can send 20 special forces agents through unknown tunnels and have them beat all the terrorists. That's what sophistry is. Yeah.
Destiny, are you basing you're looking at how the IDF should operate based on video games and movies?
That's what it seems like when people talk about special forces. It's a very video game movie approach. The idea that if you send in some special forces, they can beat a whole bunch of people. But historically, I think there were two really good examples where the United States tried this and it ended in disaster. And Black Hawk movie was one of the movies made about that, where Jesus, I haven't actually even seen the movie, but that shows that like when special forces got pinned down in a bad area and they had to bring in a ton of support and way more people end up dying as a result of all of this. Because of like what happens. It was Mogadishu, I think was the area it was called. But yeah, you don't just send in unsupported special forces unless it's for very...
I didn't say unsupported.
What?
I didn't say unsupported.
Okay, but no, but when you talk about support, the support is not special forces going in on their own and fighting and killing terrorists. Special forces either work in support roles or they do highly specialized missions. For instance, like flying into Pakistan and killing Osama bin Laden. That would be an example of like a specialized mission that special forces would do. There is no example in the history of all of warfare where special forces go into to a city, an enemy city, and kill all the terrorists. That just never happens. So the idea that this is brought up as some serious like pushback on how Israel should be conducting military operations has no basis in reality, has no basis in military operations, has no basis in how any country operates. It's just again, like you said, an impossible standard to hold Israel to. And then to do all of this and to say that like Israel needs to draw a ceasefire or Israel needs to stop the fighting and Hamas should be allowed to stand, or we should give, earlier you were saying we should give more power. Okay, you were saying we should give more power to the Palestinian Authority to go in and clear out Gaza, and now you're telling me that the Palestinian Authority has no legitimacy in the West Bank because you wouldn't answer the question of why is the West Bank treated better than the Gaza Strip, and it's because less terrorism comes from the West Bank within the Gaza Strip, but you don't want to answer that because obviously you would see that the citizens of Gaza have some responsibility for why the blockade exists there. It's just there's like this impossible set of conditions given to Israel where we're unironically telling them to negotiate a peace deal that the Palestinians already walked away from 23 years ago against a group of people that have been shooting rockets into this country every single day for like the past 20 years. It's just like no other country on earth would be held to this standard of negotiation. You know, it's insane.
I appreciate that, Destiny.
All right, bye. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.